It's Tennessee Matters on the Tennessee Radio Network.
Welcome to Tennessee Matters. I'm John Clark on the Tennessee Radio Network. Abandoned structures are places that open the imagination and invite interpretation. While often overlooked by passers-by, their remains act as a perfect structure for the lens of a camera. Jay Farrell is a Nashville-based photographer who loves photographing abandoned structures. He has several books out about it. His latest one is Abandoned Tennessee, Touched by Time. He also has a book called Abandoned Nashville, Dark Corners of the Music City. Jay Farrell is our guest today. What interests you about abandoned buildings?
Originally, I liked the canvas and bringing models there to photograph years ago. I started doing that over 15 years ago. But then at that point, Nashville had plenty of them. Mm-hmm. And really now there's none because of gentrification. But over the last several years, I kind of lost interest in working with the models. One day I had one that was late or didn't show up. I can't remember what the situation was. And I just photographed the building and thought, well, this is almost better. Nobody talks back. There's no scheduling conflicts.
Yeah.
It was just, I started doing more of that. And I also had regret that I didn't photograph enough of just the buildings for some of the places that got knocked down.
Yeah.
Like the old Howard Johnson Motel, the old El Dorado Motel, several other places. And I kind of learned my lesson from that.
You know, you bring up an interesting point, gentrification, and it's happening, most cities in Tennessee and all over the country. Sure. So we're losing them at a rapid pace. I understand progress, but it's sad at the same time, It
is. Well, a lot of the time, what I see a lot of them doing is they're getting revitalized for future use, where they still keep the character of the old shell, which is exactly what's happened with the old Madison Mill building, and then one of this old machine shop building in Memphis that I got in before they started working on it. I guess the Historical Society pressured them the developers to keep the character of the building, and they are. So some of them are doing that.
Yeah, you're right. That is happening a lot more, and you enjoy it when you go in. You say, well, this was the old, whatever building. This was an old school building or something, and I went to school here when I was a kid. So you can still generate quite a few memories from those buildings that they fixed up too, can't you?
Well, sure, I'd rather see them do that than knock it down.
Yeah.
But it still doesn't do a lot for me when that happens, unless I've already been there.
Yeah. You want it back the old way. Hey, this is more fun this way. Yeah, I'm someone who will stop and turn back around and go and look at an abandoned building too, and I'm fascinated with them as well, and that's why I wanted to read your books, and I read both of them. Well, I read Abandoned Nashville and also Abandoned Tennessee, and it was just I wasn't familiar with a lot of the places, but it's still nonetheless is fascinating. Is it about the what happened there, who was there, and what is the fascination, do you think, for many of us on these buildings?
It's become more of that for me. Some of my perspective has changed as we went along. I've always kept the same approach that I take only photographs and leave only footprints. It sounds cliche. I think that saying has been around, but it really holds true. And that's how you avoid hostility and charges because I go in, if there's a way in, I go inside them because I feel that that's where the best story is told.
Yeah.
Rather than just taking photographs from the road. And I think a lot of the authors in our series we all do things differently from each other, and you can definitely tell that we have different visions, but it kind of all ties together. We have the same interest. But I think before I just liked the texture of the blighted buildings, and it was kind of a thrill of going inside there. It's like, okay, cool, I didn't fall through the floor, and found some awful graffiti, and I guess here's what's been happening in here since it's been abandoned. You can see signs of inhabitants and all that. But yeah, and I still have those same interests, but it's expanded. Over the last couple of years, I started getting more interested in the actual history of these places. Like I reached out to community members and even historians, and I didn't think they'd be receptive. They'd probably just think, it's just a trespasser. It's got nothing to do with us. We're not helping them. No, but I find that if you ask them, they'll tell you. And as long as I'm not going in there spray painting the place, they don't I think a lot of people, even that don't explore, they enjoy seeing it. So I was pleasantly surprised by that. So it's just fascinated me more with the history.
You have a background in it before you in each chapter of the book, that you have a background about the building, and I think that adds to it. It puts it in context and lets people know, hey, this is what this used to be, and this is why it's like that. So that pays off for you to go and do some research then.
I think so. I mean, I've do a lot more research than I did in the early days. Still with like abandoned houses, it doesn't really do any good for me to know that John Smith lived there in 1920.
Yeah.
I let the story tell itself in that case. But if I run across like an old schoolhouse or factory or store, or even a house that's very noteworthy, if there's something very different about it, then I'll do my best to research it, and that is really part of the fun.
Mm-hmm. I have to ask, how do you access these? I know you talk about you get the research on the background, but without giving away too much, how do you access them? Do you just if you can't find out who owns it, do you just go in there, or what do you do?
I never approach anybody. I just go in. I mean, I don't kick in any doors or break windows or anything like that, but really and truly, most of these places aren't 100% abandoned, because somebody owns them, whether it's an heir that just hasn't done anything with it, or, if vagrants have kicked in the doors and windows and provided the access point, or, a lot of time they'll cut fences and stuff in front of factories, and that's my way in. But I didn't create that way in. But if anybody really cared that much, it wouldn't be left like that in the first place. And besides, how would you ever find out who owns it? Especially if I'm far away from home, I don't know anybody around there, and you go knocking on doors. No, it's just yeah. But sometimes you know when to pick your battles. If you see signs of inhabitants, like don't know if it could be a drug house, but generally those clues will be there. Like you'll see cameras and even things. I've seen like sports pennants and stuff hung on trees, where they kind of want you to know that somebody's there.
There's some inherent dangers to it too. Then, like structural issues you can fall through, or run into somebody you don't need to run into. Have you had any situations like that?
Yeah, structurally it's dangerous. That's for sure. I remember Christmas Day 2018. I was in East Tennessee, I think around Dayton or something, and I stepped on a board with a nail or something, and I remember having to nurse that wound for the next 10 days or so.
Yeah. Keep up with your tetanus shots, right?
Yeah, definitely. And both me and my good friend Jerry, that he's another author in the series, we've gone exploring a lot together, and other times I've just gone solo. Yeah. But we've both fallen through floors, thankfully not a high distance. You always got to kind of know what's under your feet. But as far as people go, I think a lot of people think it happens more than it really does.
Yeah, but it's good to have your friend with you too. Good to have a backup, somebody there with you, right?
It's really the smarter way to do it, and I enjoy traveling with them. There's just some days, especially on my out-of-state trips where I've spent multiple days, like in Mississippi, there's really no way I could have done that with anybody, I don't think. Most people don't have that kind of patience where they just travel for several days and have no idea the destination, just randomly go. Most people can't operate like that, and that's perfectly fine. I don't really need their nagging. I just want to go explore just kind of whatever direction, and it worked out. But to answer your question about people, occasionally we've had I've had neighbors or whatever, and usually once they see what I'm doing, they don't care too much. I've never really had blatant hostility. Yeah. But there was one case in Memphis. I was actually with one of my readers that I'd only met once before that, and we stopped at this abandoned church because right now the materials are handed in for abandoned Memphis, and that as long as COVID doesn't mess up the scheduling for the publishing, that should be coming out in September, I think.
Yeah. So okay. So that's close. How many books do you have total?
Right now, there's 10.
Oh, wow. Really? Oh my gosh!
Yep.
I didn't realize you had that many. That's great.
Well, I explored before and just kind of just built up content, having no idea I'd ever be published. But before I jump on that subject too much, I did want to tell you about one encounter at that abandoned church.
Okay.
There was no people around, and we went in. There was like a loose piece of plywood. Got inside, and then there was a side entrance that I didn't see, and a couple guys walked in. I guess but They were nice guys. They were homeless,
Mm-hmm.
but they just kind of wanted to see what was up. Naturally, it's their turf.
Yeah.
Had a chat with them, and then just kind of finished up, and then left out the other entrance because I didn't know if they were going to set us up or how that worked. But it seems to me if that was going to happen, it would have happened when we were inside. Nobody could see it.
Yeah.
But then this lady, her eyes were bugged out of her head. She yells, "What the F are you doing in there?"
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just told her I was just taking photos, and she didn't seem to like that answer. And somehow I just kind of managed to calm her down, and the two guys that were with her calmed her down, and I just went off into the sunset. That was really the only time somebody was really hostile.
I guess we should probably do a disclaimer and say, look, if you're listening to this show, don't attempt this on your own, right?
Well, yeah, there's definitely some risks that come with it.
Yeah.
It's good people understand them. It's one thing I've learned that it's all in your approach.
Mm-hmm.
If you act like you're doing something sketchy, then people are going to pick up on that. Exploring in eastern Kentucky, people notice you more because it's a tightly knit community. If you go about it the right way, they'll be really nice to you. But if you go about it the wrong way, you could be in some serious trouble.
I know you mentioned Kentucky, and you mentioned you go to Mississippi, and of course in Tennessee. What other areas do you cover? It seems to be regional, right?
It is because of distribution, which was something that was difficult for me to understand at the beginning. And there's still some projects I wish I could do that would cover multiple areas or the whole entire region of the country, where it wouldn't really matter where it is, but. Who knows? That could still happen. But also Alabama I've covered, including abandoned asylum I went to there.
Oh, there's a lot of those around. I think people really have a fascination with those. What was that like?
Oh, it was pretty eerie.
Yeah.
For sure. Just like one might think.
Exactly. Yeah. They look eerie from the outside, much less going on the inside.
Oh, very. Yeah. Even the straight, narrow road going up to it was eerie. That
begs the question, then. Have you ever heard ghost stories or seen anything to that effect in the buildings? I
don't doubt that it exists.
Yeah.
And then that's really the question a lot of people ask is haunted. I'm thinking to myself, probably.
Yeah.
I've never really been bothered by any spirits, and I don't really pay attention to it. So I guess I'm just not there for that. But I guess there's little signs, like a lot of the time the temperature drops when you walk inside, and there's probably a scientific explanation for it. Others could say it's spirits. I don't give it a lot of thought, really, honestly.
Yeah, that's why I asked that, because everybody else wants to know that. So hopefully I answered some questions for a lot of people, including myself, of course. So today we are talking with photographer Jay Farrell. He is based out of Nashville, and as he told us, he has 10 books out on abandoned locations in various states. His latest is called Abandoned Tennessee, Touched by Time, and then he has one called Abandoned Nashville, Dark Corners of Music City, and he has one coming out about Memphis very, very soon. What are some of your favorite places? And looking in the books, and you have pictures of them, great pictures, and you tell stories. What are some of the your favorites?
It's kind of hard to top the Asylum in Alabama. And also recently, me and my friend Jerry, I made a couple solo trips to eastern Kentucky, but I did one with him before everything went crazy with COVID.
Yeah.
Because I went back to this little town that was a coal mining town, and we went into these abandoned schools. That was really hard to top. And then an old coal mine company store.
Yeah.
That was those are some of my favorites. But besides that, I think Madison Mill, that's in the Nashville book, and the Greer Stadium, that was really hard to beat. And some of the random houses in abandoned Tennessee, like this old Annabella Mansion.
Those dot the landscape still. You'll see them. I saw some, I was traveling last week, and I saw some houses that were old like that, and you just know that those are antebellum mansions. You don't know how long they've been abandoned, but there's still a lot of those out there.
Yeah, interestingly enough, this one here, I think somebody had an idea of rescuing it years before. The charm was mostly kept on the inside, but they put vinyl siding on the outside. So, from what I understand, it'll lose its place on the historic registry if somebody does something like that.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess they get in there and they think, well, we're going to really fix this place up, and it costs more and more money the longer you go on it.
Yep.
It's a little, you peel back those layers, and it becomes a money pit. Yeah.
Well, the same like these abandoned cars that are sitting in fields and sunk in the ground. Somebody gets the bright idea, okay, we're going to restore this. Yeah, sure you are.
Right.
It sits there 20 years later.
There are a lot of, unfortunately, a lot of hospitals have closed, certainly smaller ones. You mentioned the asylums. But those are, there's a certain, I guess, a fascination with those too, just like the asylums. Everybody seems to have that fascination with those. Have you photographed many of the general hospitals, or has it mainly been what was asylums before?
The only asylum I've been to is the one in Alabama.
Yeah.
I guess there's others, but from what I understand, there's another one that's not really completely abandoned, on the property of something that's being used.
Okay.
Not sure, but I'd love to find more hospitals. It's hard to say the direction that's going to go. I know a lot of town hospitals have closed, but unless it's like an older building or something that's fascinating, it wouldn't do a lot for me, really. There was one that I tried to get into in Memphis, but construction workers have already started working on it.
Yeah,
that would have been awesome.
Yeah, once they go in there, it's not quite the same, is it, unless they start working on that?
Oh, no. Madison Mill in Nashville, I mean, they're revamping it. It's like a 1.5-year long project, and I got in there just probably a month before the construction workers started. I'm thinking to myself, thank you for that. Wow.
Yeah. You have you mentioned the abandoned stadiums, and you have one in one of the books, and you also have the old Starwood Amphitheater in Nashville. Those venues are interesting, too, like that.
There's no buildings left at Starwood, but from what I understand, they immediately knocked those buildings down when they closed in, I think, 2006.
Okay.
The buildings are gone, but it's just hard to. Yeah, that was a tough one for me because I've been to many concerts there, but
yeah.
Well,
that too has a historical significance. You think about all the people that played at Starwood over the years, and you're like, wow, this person played. I mean, you think of some of the ones you went to. This person played here, and this person played here, and that adds a special historical significance in some ways. And there are a lot of old buildings too where something historical happened. Maybe like a recording studio where someone recorded a hit record, or some famous documents were signed. So there's some really significant historical locations, and we've lost a lot of them.
Yeah, it's very true. I remember the last show I saw at Starwood, I think, was The Cure, and they've always been one of my favorites. I've also seen Allman Brothers there and plenty of others. It was kind of sad to walk through like that, but something. If I'm going to go to a place that means something to somebody else, I got to take my medicine as well.
Yeah, that's true. And by the way, The Cure is one of my favorite bands. So,
all right, good.
I see them every chance I get. They're not touring right now, but I see them every chance they get. Inductees into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame too. So, and the Allman Brothers are obviously huge. So you remember where you see people at concerts like that. It really does have an impact. Something that I've noticed in reading books, abandoned books, is that in photographs. It's interesting. You may have, let's say, a hospital, and all of a sudden there's like a bicycle in a corridor. And it's something that's completely out of place. And you're like, how did that get in here? That's baffling. Do you see that quite a bit?
A lot of it. Mattresses and, a bunch of, food containers, empty spray cans. There's no telling what you'll find in these places. I think a lot of time, like, whether it's homeless or other vagrants hang out there, and sometimes it's probably either stolen goods or else something that they have is no longer good, or they plan on coming back, or who knows.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've seen a lot of random things left behind. A lot of them. Some
too are just like everybody got up and walked out one day, and it looks the same as it did. And I guess maybe somebody passed away or something. You probably see quite a bit of those too. Maybe the asylums are like that in some ways.
Oh, not this asylum. It was definitely trashed by vandals, and then that area is really prone to having tornadoes too. But
okay.
it still had a very eerie presence. One thing that happens is the steps over time. There's debris and roofing material that make them not a flat surface.
Okay.
So if you're going on muscle memory, you'll be in some serious trouble. You really have to watch and take your time with your game.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So,
but yeah, I remember this one house in Kentucky that was like that. It was all overgrown by bushes. It was kind of interesting, and I got inside, and it did kind of look like Granny walked away. And on the way out, it had one of those digital electric meters that actually was zeroed out, but it was still on.
Huh.
I'm guessing that the workers probably didn't want to get back there in the weeds and get eaten by ticks.
Yeah. Oh, gosh.
So they figured that meter wasn't worth so much after all.
Yeah, right. Do people approach you a lot of times and say, there's a place you should check out? And do you get that a lot, or stories about places?
Sometimes. You're talking about just like neighbors of property.
Yeah, or if somebody you're in. Somebody the restaurant, there in Nashville or something, and somebody says, hey, Jay, I just rode out there, I was outside of Memphis, and I saw this place you need to check out. Do you get that sometimes?
Sometimes I do, and I really appreciate it. And, and that's nice that they think enough of me to tell me that, because I have to tell you, I don't really share locations. I get a lot of people asking, but unless it's somebody I know and know their intentions, I don't, because a lot of time, people can get there, and it's more than they bargained for, or else if they bring extra people there, or somebody does something stupid, and then it gets us, in other words, it makes the whole, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but I guess, the whole activity of exploring, could make it look bad.
Yeah, and you want to remain some semblance of secrecy, It's like, I found this place, I'm photographing it, putting it in a book, I want people to enjoy it from that standpoint. There's an art to what you're doing, and you want to create that art. I'm sure that plays into it for you.
Yeah, that's part of it. I mean, I know I'm not going to be the only person to photograph these places. It's just, I have to do it in such a way that's unique to how I do it. But that doesn't mean that. I want a lot of people going there and then, doing something dumb, and then it makes it all the much harder. Yeah, all the more harder to go to these places.
Yeah,
I'd like us explorers to be seen as, harmless, really.
Yeah, because you are. You don't have any ill intent at all. You're not. Yeah, you're not a souvenir hunter or anything like that.
Yeah, and that's another thing. I've seen people like on different Facebook groups, and I don't really enjoy too many of those.
Yeah.
It seems like it's always just, either people are too nosy or sanctimonious. Nah, I just don't have time. They don't deserve to see my work if it's going to be like that.
Yeah.
But, there's a couple of them that I'm still on that are still good. But I've seen people even make comments like, oh, somebody should rescue that furniture. It's like, well,
yeah.
How would you explain that if cops pull up and you're walking out with something?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because sometimes people will probably call the cops and say, there's somebody in that house, That could happen. Could easily happen.
Sure. I mean, but if I'm approached, it's not a big deal. I'll just talk to them. And, it gives me a little bit of an edge that I can tell them about my books.
Hey, there you go. That's a great way to look at it. Yeah.
Sometimes I've even carried some with me.
Hey, look at this. This is my latest book, Abandoned Tennessee. Yeah, exactly. So talk about this, the latest book, too, Abandoned Tennessee, Touched by Time. Talk about that whole book and that whole project.
It was, at that point, it was a lot of very random explorations. I really like the book a lot, but it is one of my more random ones. Whereas a lot of random locations, and then, like you said, I remember I reached out to a local community to find out about this abandoned general store that's in that book, and that was really the first book that came before Nashville. That was really the first book I did a lot of research on these places.
Yeah.
More so than even Abandoned Tennessee. Of course, I knew some history of some of the places I went to in the first one, but this one, I was kind of starting from scratch. And I found out information, and one lady messages me and says, hey, I live not too terribly far from there, and, we get on our four-wheelers and ride through the woods, and there's a couple houses that have probably been there for 50 years abandoned. And I can take you there. There's no way to drive there.
Yeah.
Wow, how cool! So, yeah, it was kind of neat. It was this, I guess it's a UTV or something, and we went. It was muddy that day, and I guess it was after some rain and all that. I think in late winter before all the foliage comes back, because that's the worst time when all the overgrowth comes back. So really, winter is my biggest exploring time. But we did that, and her son and his friend, followed us on four-wheelers, and I guess after the end of that trip, none of us are serial killers. We figured that out.
Yeah.
After going through those woods, but it was neat. That there was, so there was definitely some stuff that other people have bestowed me with locations and others that I looked for and had to look for multiple times before finding it. It was definitely neat. And they even found this old time abandoned school.
So it was like a little community in there then.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, not there, but in a different place. It was an abandoned school that actually the first time I've ever seen gravity-fed toilets in a concrete shell.
Yeah. What about the Memphis book that you say that you're hoping to release in September? What can we expect in that one?
That's a good one. It's going to be great. I went there originally for a book signing at a local bookstore called Novel, and my friend Jerry is with me. We got it that day. We got into this old abandoned motel and an old smokeless tobacco factory. This place was huge, and then I went back again, and there's like an old machine shop, drive-in movie theater, several other places, and then went back a third time even. So yeah, it's a good variety of industrial, and then there's even like sort of a bonus surprise that I'm not going to blow just yet. It's one that you wouldn't expect to see that close to the city. You would expect to see that like in the middle of a cotton town in Mississippi.
I've got to get the book now. Well, I was going to get the book anyway. So, but now, a little intriguing. You have to do that. Your publisher, Arcadia, does a great job with these books. And I know there's a series about them, as you said, regionally. And, so they're the perfect size. They have, it's an easy read and a lot of great photographs in it. So, and the fact that you've done 10, there's a lot of content out there. So people should pick up your books for sure. They're just an interesting read.
Oh, I appreciate that. And I love it when people enjoy them. Actually, the publisher is Fonthill Media. They're out of the UK.
Okay.
But Arcadia does the distribution, but they do a fabulous job printing them. Really nice paper quality, and they're really good to work with. I never had any intentions of being an author before this, and and they've really helped me through the process. And I was a decent writer before with blogging, but not at the publishing level, and they've really helped me.
What's next on the horizon? I know you're hoping to get that book out in September, and hopefully things will be pretty much back to normal in September. But anything that you have going on right now?
Other projects, Abandoned South Mississippi is going to come out sometime, I think, late this year, and also Abandoned Eastern Kentucky. That was a project I started actually last year, and made up several trips. So that's going to be a really good one as well. Other than that, I think that's it.
Yeah.
Except for I'm just exploring, and whatever I put together after that, I'm just going to take my time with it. When it happens, it happens.
Where are your books available right now? I know a lot of the bookstores may or may not be closed, but online, assuming they're largely available online.
Barnes & Noble. I've even heard that like Kroger and Whole Foods have them, and Sam's and Walmart. Amazon, of course, sells them. Walgreens has them. I don't know about every Walgreens, but the one by me certainly does. I've even done a signing event there. There's lots of places that I wouldn't have expected, but they sell them.
Well, Jay, it's good to talk to you and get to know you, and I really enjoyed the books, and I wish you well in continuing to do this, and it's preserving history, and I think people will really appreciate it, and they'll probably know some of the places. So, hey, thanks for taking time to talk about it today. I appreciate it.
Oh, my pleasure, and I appreciate you having me on.
That's Jay Farrell. He is a Nashville-based photographer who enjoys photographing abandoned buildings all over the state of Tennessee. His latest one is called Abandoned Tennessee, Touched by Time. He has another one that's fairly recent called Abandoned Nashville, Dark Corners of Music City. He's also got 8 other books out and a brand new one coming out on Abandoned Memphis in September. We thank Jay for being our guest on today's show, and thank you for listening, and I will talk to you next week on Tennessee Matters.